2, 1.
Welcome in, Husker Extra Podcast. My name is Chris. I have a mouthful of Runza right now.
Yeah.
Nice timing.
There's Steve. Yeah,
What do
bad
you
timing.
got? What do you got? Some chicken strips?
I got some chicken tenders and fries.
Tenders.
Honey mustard sauce. Mountain Dew, of course, to
Okay.
drink. We're doing this a little early. It's 1:01 p.m. on a Friday afternoon here. Going a little early since baseball first pitch is at 4 o'clock, 4:05. We'll talk a little baseball later on. We'll talk some spring football. We'll talk the latest breaking news. Thor Bjarnason announcing he will not return to the men's basketball program. Just came out about a half hour ago. And we'll touch on volleyball a little bit too. But let's get right into it. We're 8 days away from the red-white spring game at Memorial Stadium. We have one more media availability session next Wednesday before the game. We'll talk to the guys after the game, of course, and then it's into the quote unquote off season for Nebraska football. And I guess I'll throw it to you guys. Obviously we'll see more next week, and we'll talk about this more next week. But what are maybe some of the questions we still need to find answers to as we kind of wrap up spring ball here?
Well, Parker, one of them, Parker, is how many people you anticipate at this game?
Well, I've been running the ticket sales myself, so I have a pretty. The last update.
We have a good source on ticket sales.
Yeah. The last update from the university was in the middle of the week, and they were pushing toward 30,000. Not quite. The cap is like between 42 and 43,000. Ticket sales have been steady over the week from, leading up to this Wednesday. Basically, they had sold 4,000 or 5,000 more tickets, and so I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the weekend it's up over 30,000. I don't know this for sure, but I hesitate a little bit saying this, but I really wouldn't be surprised if it ends up selling out at this point. The main reason for that being that I looked at the forecast this morning, and it shows 74 and sunny for Friday and 76 and partly cloudy for Saturday next week. And I just feel like people, as it gets a little closer, there's still tickets available. You check the forecast and see it's going to be a beautiful weekend in Lincoln and at the stadium. You might just say, heck yeah, let's do it. So I think the closing stretch will be strong. And even, they're encouraging people to buy tickets in advance. But I do think that if it's really that nice on Saturday, there could be a walk-up crowd too. So they'll go north of 30,000. I wouldn't be surprised if they push it toward a sellout. And a lot of people there, among a lot of other things that they'll be interested to see, the young quarterbacks, the veteran defense, the big wide receivers. There's a big running back that's put together an intriguing spring, and this is very squarely Sipple's part of the program.
Yeah, the problem I heard with your summation there is you say 74 or 76 and sunny, partly cloudy. That guarantees I will have the attention span of a gnat that day. I'm going to have to really lock in.
You're going to be out riding the motorcycle till like 12:58 and then just roll up on Stadium Drive. All right, I'm here. You can start now.
Just roll it right up to the 50-yard line, pop the kickstand down.
Clark, I'm just going to go get a quick – I know it just ended. I'm going to go get a quick ride in. I'll start riding by like 7 o'clock. How about that?
Yeah, I'll put myself on deadline. It's interesting you mentioned the quarterbacks. One way to guarantee probably a sellout is with a quarterback battle. There's not one. So that honestly what always helps ticket sales when that situation presents itself. It's not, but there is intrigue with that position. I would say if I were Joe fan, I would be interested to see Adrian, what he looks like this spring. If I were trying to promote the game, I'd say it would probably be pretty interesting to just come and watch what Adrian looks like. Leaned up, super fast, and then look at the backup quarterbacks, Heinrich Harburg and Logan Smothers and Matt Masker, and try to size them up, right?
Just a bunch of liquored up dudes in the stands going, God, Adrian looks lean. Looks strong and lean.
I don't know
Adrian!
that they're liquored up.
Oh, come on now. We can be honest here.
It's a spring game, though.
What? It's a spring game, bro. First,
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful weather. You don't think
75 degrees, and we're outside
Yeah.
watching our young, lean Adrian run around. I'd be
Well-
getting liquored up. I might get liquored up anyway.
so you can really get the fan experience.
Yeah, bring a couple summer shandies up to the press box.
Summer shanties. Is that what you'd be going with? Summer
Shandies, not shanty. It's not a It's not a song that
It's not a
sailors.
structure on the coast of the ocean.
It's a shandy. It's
Shandy.
a beer with lemonade in it.
Lining
Okay.
Kugels.
Like
Chippewa
summer
Falls,
shandy.
Wisconsin.
I don't think we could pull that off.
Probably not. No, that would be frowned upon.
Isn't
Keith,
there
I'm
a-
not going to do that.
Was it Illinois? Illinois, they had beers they had some post game beers available in the press
They
box
did.
in Illinois. That was sweet.
We did. Yep. Beers and pizza.
That's
And
not
of course, all the
All the custard I
Custard
could
you
cram
can-
into my fat mouth.
all of the what? I'm sorry.
Custard?
mustard.
Oh yeah, custard. You love that custard.
It
Yeah,
was a
Baz was-
disgusting display.
He was
Like, it
melting.
really was.
He was melting on press row because he was like 60% custard.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad time. I ate so much I got sick. Like it was a bad. I was like a little kid.
Well, you
Bad
hung in
beer.
there well. I didn't even notice.
Well, I'm a grinder. You get through it.
Yeah.
Just illness, injury. You don't complain. You just get the job done. Drove the damn car back to the hotel that night too, as I recall.
You did?
Went through McDonald's at like 1:30 in the morning.
I'm
Remember
sure
that.
that was pleasant. I think I put
Probably
all
in a
those,
good mood.
those very extreme circumstances out of my mind.
Oh, you gotta let them marinate. You gotta remember them and learn from them.
Didn't we go to two places? Didn't we have to like drive through two places because
Because what?
oh
Oh, I know what you're
there was
saying.
there was
yeah.
a photographer that had a different idea of maybe what post game food looked like than the rest of us.
Yeah, it was. And then we had like an hour drive back to the hotel because we
Baz
stayed in,
handled
like,
Baz handled that request really well.
about as well as I handle a lot of stuff like that. A lot of patience. As well as I handled Sipple saying I got to pack up the plantation up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
How many weeks?
Tom Petty
Like we've talked a lot about the last trip to Illinois and the next trip to Illinois. So there's gonna be quite a buildup to that weekend. But it's gonna be crazy. One of the things, Sipple, I'm interested in, or both of you, I'm interested in. Baz, you talked to a couple of those offensive linemen on Wednesday. The right guard job seems to be maybe not exclusively down to, but primarily between Matt Sichterman and Brant Banks. And so that I thought it was interesting. Greg Austin talking about putting the puzzle together on the offensive line. He said he's got 9 guys who he feels good about right now. Those would be the returning 4 guys who started the last game of last season: Turner Corcoran at left guard, or at left tackle, Ethan Piper left guard, Juergens at center, Ben Hart at right tackle. And then I think the other 4 in contention are Sichterman and Banks, Brock Bando, and Nori Newelli, who's sort of emerged as a guy. Greg Austin said he's turning into a real dude. And so that group of 9, I think they feel good about. It's going to be interesting to see if a guy who's been through a lot of rigmarole in his career, like Matt Sichterman, 5th-year guy, can win a starting job for the first time in his career as a 5th-year player, or if ultimately, Brant Banks, redshirt freshman, can supplant him for that spot. But I think Greg Austin, he's felt good about the depth in that room now. Now the challenge, I think, is to take the step from being talented to being good consistently.
Yeah, you got to find, for one thing, chemistry is always a big discussion with that particular group. But as he said the other day when he got here, so the 2018 season, he said, look, we only had 5. Now we have 9. And actually, as you wrote, Parker, it's more like 10.
Right.
I mean, they have 10 capable offensive linemen. You should be able to make that work. Now, at what level do you make it work? That remains to be seen. I don't think anybody wants to hear us make too many predictions about anything. especially ones that are like positive predictions. I feel like
if you want
that's
to
not
predict
the
a
way to-
meltdown, the people will eat it up.
yeah, I think that the way to go right now is not to say too many things positive, but they have some guys up front. We always talk about the defense as the unit that's the stronger of the two, and it is. But the offense is, I think, when you look at the receivers and that quarterback we alluded to, Adrian Martinez, if you're a defensive coordinator, that gets your attention. Their receivers coupled with their quarterback alone gets your attention if they're good up front.
So let's say in the unlikely event you're able to hold attention on the spring game next Saturday, with the weather being what it's going to be.
Maybe for a half, let's just say.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. So what do you want to see? You know, we watched almost 3 hours over there last Saturday. You know, there were only 2 scholarship running backs healthy. So like what is you took that in, saw a lot of stuff. So what is it then? Where do you start with what you look for on May 1st?
I think you start with 2 things that go hand in hand. You look at the running back position and assess their running back running game. And then what's the play action look like with downfield throws? Because they're emphasizing downfield throws, and they appear to have receivers now, that are not 5'8" that can work corners on the perimeter and catch downfield throws. So what's that part of it look like? Can Adrian complete those passes? Can the other quarterbacks? We saw quarterbacks last Saturday during the open practice. We saw Logan Smothers and Heinrich Harburg complete downfield passes. So let's see if they can do that. I'm not going to say it's a game, but in a live scrimmage.
Yep, I agree with you. That'll be interesting. And then I wonder too if we'll get a better look at the specialists. There wasn't much of that. We didn't see much live. We saw some drill work, special teams wise, but I'd be curious to see if Connor Culp is back in action, and how Daniel Cherney and William Pristup punt the ball is an area they need to be more consistent in. And then I'm curious. We just talked about the offensive line, but in the front line battle, you know, that's a experienced defensive line that Greg Austin's group is going against every day in practice. And you know, from what we heard on Wednesday in that scrimmage, which was closed, the defense had the upper hand, and they just put up 30 seconds of highlights, but it included, you know, Damian Daniels stripping a running back and forcing a fumble and all of that. And I thought in the limited live stuff that we saw last Saturday, the defensive front really had pretty consistent pressure. And so I'm curious to look from above at how those 2 units stack up at this point. It'd be natural if it's sort of advantage defensive line for the most part right now, but you'd like to see the offensive line sort of step up and say, okay, you know, we can play with these guys.
Baz, what would you like to see?
I want to see how good the defense is. You know, we heard about how they dominated that scrimmage the other day.
Yep.
You know, do they do that again next Saturday? And if they do, that raises a whole other bag full of questions, right? What's wrong with the offense? Why can't they score? All those other things. But we thought the defense would be pretty good, right? And it sounds like they are. So if they come out and they have a dominant day on Saturday, you go, okay, yeah, that's real. What they're telling us is real. So I want to see just how good they are. I know they have a lot of great individual pieces, and we've seen those and talked about those. But just what does the defense look like as a whole? How aggressive are they? We may not see a whole lot with it being a spring game, but just want to see where that unit's at right now as a whole.
You know what's interesting? What's interesting? If there is one unit that dominates, that will be a gigantic topic going forward. the other side, whatever side doesn't dominate, will be the big topic. So if you're a head coach in a spring game, and not many teams really even do this anymore, like Nebraska. But if you, I don't think, maybe you could correct me on that, but But if one unit dominates, I don't think that's what you want as a head coach. You want it to be pretty even, right? If the defense really shuts down the offense and forces, like, what if they pick off Adrian 3 times, and the running backs fumble a couple times? Well, what's the conversation going to be like all summer long, right?
Well, it's not going to be about the defense, that's for sure.
No, Parker will be in St. Lucia in the Caribbean, and he'll hear the talk, But anyway,
He'll be in Columbia.
Yeah, some guy will just mosey up to him on the beach and say, "Man, what's the deal with in that?"
Nebraska's offense, Jesus.
A couple summers ago, was that 2018? I went to Alaska with my dad. My brother lives up there, so we went up there. First time I'd ever been. Went to see him up there, and flight got delayed, so I landed in Anchorage at like 4 a.m. Just completely body clock, just like completely wrecked. Had no idea what time it was. It's like 4 a.m. Slept for a couple hours. Got on the elevator, went down to the lobby. It opened up, and there's 4 dudes like fully decked out in Nebraska gear, standing in the hotel lobby, like getting ready to go fishing or something. It's like literally the first humans I recall seeing after landing in Alaska.
That's incredible.
Like 4 big burly dudes all in Nebraska gear. It's like,
Parker's original thought was that he was in a plane crash and woke up in hell when he saw that.
Several hours later, Jamie
I can't escape it.
So that's what happens when you go on vacation.
Yeah. How dare you?
So there you go.
Speaking of a commitment, though, should we just you want to talk recruiting just for a minute? The spring game is shaping up to be a big weekend on that front. I think it's safe to say there'll be dozens. It's still a dead period, so Nebraska can't like host these guys. They can't hang out in the locker room or see the facilities or even like talk to the coaches. They could technically be in the stands and like talk on the phone or something like that, but they can't it can't be a recruiting event hosted by Nebraska. Even still, there's a bunch of guys. Probably there's just a few headliners. We don't need to go through everyone. You can find a list of all the people we've got confirmed coming on huskerextra.com. But interestingly, there's a quarterback from each of the next 2 recruiting classes scheduled to be on campus. MJ Morris, who's a 4-star kid out of Atlanta, 2022, and then Reese Mooney from Louisiana in the 2023 class. Both guys that Nebraska's been recruiting for a long time already. It's not – I'm not actually sure, don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt if Richard Torres, the quarterback from San Antonio, is also going to be in town. There's been reports that he's going to be. I just haven't confirmed that myself. But, so you're talking about potentially 3 scholarship quarterback candidates for the next 2 classes in town, which is really interesting.
That's big in itself. Yeah.
If out of those 3, you've got the 2 next quarterbacks that commit to Nebraska, I mean, that's substantial, obviously. There's a kid, a defensive lineman named Chris McClellan from Oklahoma that's going to be in town, who is sort of like a 3-star guy. Nebraska offered him like several months ago, one of his first offers. And then in 24/7 Sports' latest rankings update, he was number 100 overall nationally. Solid 4-star guy, one of the fastest risers in the country. So he's going to be up here, and he's going to be back for an official visit at some point this summer. It sounds like, I mean, there's the last offers he's picked up are from Ohio State and Oklahoma and Auburn and LSU. So there's a lot of competition there, obviously. And then there's a couple of, interesting wide receivers. A guy named Landon Sampson from Texas, from the Dallas area. Sipple, you know all of the high schools in the Dallas area now. So
which one is he? Is he from Carter? Where's he from?
South Lake Carroll.
South Lake Carroll. Yeah, that's on the outskirts,
Outskirts of the Metroplex. I hope that's not actually like Austin or something.
It might be, actually. I think
it might be Austin.
Yeah, South Lake Carroll's Austin outskirts.
It's all.
Let's look that. I'll look it up. You guys keep talking. I'll look it up.
Baz, would you please verify that?
So Landon Sampson's from Texas, the Lone Star State. He goes to South Lake Carroll, wherever that is in the state, and he's a guy he's rated a 3-star prospect, but he's got invited to the All-American Bowl for 2022, and he's committed to that. And so he's coming up for the spring game on his own. And then he's turning around and coming back for an official visit the first weekend that they can do that in June. So there's a bunch of guys to watch. The other guy, I guess, to mention a couple more guys, 2023 guys, Jaden Hams, a tight end from just outside of Lawrence, Kansas, who was up here for the open scrimmage and is coming back now for the spring or the open practice, coming back for the spring game. He's a 4-star guy early in the rankings. And then Reese Mooney, the quarterback, is bringing a 5-star receiver from Baton Rouge named Shelton Sampson, who's a 2023 kid. He's going to have a list of suitors as long as he wants. So obviously, no sure thing there. It's going to be an uphill battle probably for Nebraska, but can't hurt to get a guy like that on campus, at this stage in the game.
South Lake Carroll is in the DFW Metroplex, northeast of downtown Dallas.
Is that right?
There you go. Yep. It's just looks like it's just east of Grapevine, Texas.
But Westlake, but what is there? There's something.
Oh, Westlake? Are we talking Westlake or South Lake?
No, it's South Lake. South Lake.
Oh, okay.
But I think
South Lake is just west of Grapevine, Texas.
Huh.
Sorry, I went in the wrong direction. Northwest of downtown. Northwest.
So Parker, thank you, Baz. Parker, you're saying like dozens of recruits over a dozen?
I mean, right now, just going with guys. I was putting together a list mostly of guys just that have offers. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 from the 2022 class. 1, 2, 3, 6 so far for the 2023 class. So you're talking about around 15 already, just in terms of guys that have offers. And then there's guys too like Gunnar Gatula, who's a Lincoln Southeast kid in the 2023 class. Doesn't have an offer from Nebraska right now, but he said his communication with them has been picking up, and he's already got offers from, he's a legit Power 5 prospect. He's got offers from Iowa State and Kansas State already. So I think there's going to be a bunch of guys, mostly regional, and then some like MJ Morris, like Reese Mooney, like Shelton Sampson from further away. But I think they're going to have a pretty good crowd, all things considered, given that it's not that everyone has to come on their own dime, and it's not even like it can't even unless I would bet that Nebraska might conveniently have some campus tours going on that might take a spin through the Hawks, on Friday and Saturday. But beyond that, beyond anything that anybody else can do, they can't go hang out in Frost's office or anything. So it's going to be a pretty big crowd on the recruiting front, given that it's a completely unofficial, deal.
Okay, that's May 1. That's May 1. And then June 1, the floodgates open, right? The official visits can start to occur again. I think this summer, or late spring into the summer, is a critical time for Frost and his staff, because they need to now this could be a column. Recruiting well would be one way to build their case that they have this thing on the right track. Now, winning games in the autumn is the best way, but if they are able to land some high profile commitments from kids in the months of May and June and July, I mean that can affect the conversation in a positive way, right?
Sure, and especially, to me, I'm really interested. I mean, quarterback recruiting is always critical, but MJ Morris and Richard Torres, also the other 2022 guy, his offer list has taken off too. But MJ Morris was a top 100 type recruit, and Reese Mooney is trending toward being something like that for 2023. He hasn't actually been ranked yet, but he told me on Wednesday night that the other schools he's trying to see this spring are Miami, Florida State, Georgia, and USC. And he's being recruited by all of them to play football and baseball. So that's if you take, and I don't know, he said he's got half his high school career ahead of him. He said he's hoping to narrow down his list of schools this summer. But especially if you land your quarterback for the next two classes, especially given what just the lack of scholarship depth in that room right now. I mean, there'd be one area that you'd sort of at least shown signs of solidifying for the future. And then I think, like you said, Sipple, to me, like Nebraska won't be the only one, but I think it's really going to pick up fast, and you wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of kids, decide where they want to go to college in the next, say, like 2 or 3 months.
Speaking of decisions, is this where we transition? Transition. Is this where we transition to?
That's a hell of a segue, Sipple. Why don't you just
that wasn't all awkward.
No, it was good.
Very smooth.
It's like you do this every day.
Wow. Come on.
Wow.
I'm addled.
Very.
Yeah.
Father Time has you in his grips.
Yeah, he does. Yes, you've put it those darker ways before.
Father Time's bony fingers have his hands on your shoulders.
You're as my guy Coulter Wall up in Alberta would say, you're lying in the wake of Time's cruel slaughter.
Well, it feels
dark
that way.
Anyway, where were you going with that?
Yeah, you're transitioning to Thor.
It's
an emotional day for Baz.
It's been an emotional day. My son, Thor Bjarnason, has decided to move on to professional basketball. He won't return for his free year in Lincoln. Of course, he was a senior this last year. Had the option to come back if he wanted to as a super senior, whatever you want to call it, with the free year, not counting against the scholarship limit. Put out an announcement about an hour ago, a little before 12:30, saying he's instead going to pursue a professional career, almost certainly over in Europe somewhere, whether it's in Iceland or whether it's over on the main continent or wherever it may be. I saw an interesting argument on Twitter as you guys were talking about football here. You could probably say Thor is one of the most popular basketball players in the program in the last 10 years, maybe. Probably top 5, Yeah. And I'm not talking best players, most talented players, but just guys that the fan base cared about, guys the fan base really rooted for.
Yep.
Thor's up there, I think, and saw a lot of stuff in his 4 years here, 40 plus teammates, a coaching change. He was a freshman on that team that won 22 games, lost once at home, and then not only didn't get into the NCAA tournament, got a 5 seed in the NIT, and that was as close to as he got to, playing in the NCAA tournament. Saw Tim Miles get fired the next year. Saw Fred Hoiberg come in the next year, and they won 7 games in a total teardown and rebuild. And for a while, it was rumored to be on the way out with a lot of those rest of those guys when Fred first got here, and then ended up coming back and being an important guy and being an important part of those teams. And then same thing this year, 7 wins, struggled in the Big Ten, had the pandemic, had everything else. He saw some stuff, and so you certainly from that aspect understand why he's ready to move on. He's going to have his degree here in another month or so in psychology. He's going to be 22, 23 years old. He can be in Iceland, go play pro ball in Iceland, make good money, be close to home, go over to Europe, play, same thing. I think he'll have a great career in Europe. He's that style of player. He'll fit the style of basketball there, and he'll have a nice career. And he's a smart guy too. There's no worrying about Thor when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, just a guy I think that will be missed around here by the fan base. Had some moments, most notably, I think blocking Jordan Bohannon's 3-pointer at the buzzer a couple of years ago, and then running down the court with his finger in the air while there was still time on the clock right before the buzzer went off. I'll always remember that. And, again, and just on top of that, just a great dude to talk to, super nice person away from the court. He's one of those guys that it's easy to root for. And you understand why the fan base loved him. The reality is part of this too, right? Look at who's coming in next year at his position. You're adding a 6'8" guy in Keon Edwards, who was basically a 5-star recruit in high school. Excuse me. You're adding Bryce McGowan's 5-star. You're adding a lot of different pieces, and it was going to be tough for Thor to get on the floor. As popular as he was and as many good things as he did, there weren't going to be a lot of minutes for him. more than likely. So this decision came from a practical standpoint too, because they're, as much as we all love Thor and as much as the fan base loves him, he wasn't going to play a whole lot next year. And we can be honest in saying that. So I think he made the right decision moving on.
You and I would say CJ Wilcher's in that category.
CJ Wilcher, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a guy that proved it at the Big East. You know, you're talking about like big time athletes, size, strength, shooting. It was just going to be tough for Thor to move over those guys.
Baz, just get yourself together. I mean, this happens in college athletics. this happens in college athletics. Pull it together. Okay.
I'm emotional. It's an emotional day.
It's okay to be emotional, but you don't want to
you're so proud when your kids want to step out and spread their wings a little bit.
Fly the coop.
Hey, I got a question for you guys. We never do this. I got a question. Can we use the term super senior? I would really like to do that.
I've had this conversation. Yeah, sure. You can call him whatever you want.
Sure.
No, I can't. You can't. Would people know what that meant? Super senior? He's a super senior?
I think it's become commonplace. Like, I think that the NCAA's rules on the extra eligibility because of COVID, that's become common enough, I think, in college athletics. Maybe our listeners feel differently about that. But no, I think people...
We need a tidy term for it. There's no question about that.
More importantly, would one of the editors come over to my office and go and ask, like, what's this term super senior in your...
You don't get bothered like that. We all know that. In your little gilded tower at the Journal-Star.
You get edited?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You haven't had a story. You haven't had a column edited since 1997. What are you talking about?
What's wrong with you guys? I just got edited.
What's your problem?
What's your problem? I think I got edited yesterday.
What's your problem?
Yeah. So super senior, I don't know if that's going to fly or not, but I do love that term.
I like that too. I mean,
will you trial balloon it?
Yeah, why don't you trial balloon it? Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I can put it in my Thor story too. I'll put it in my
Dude,
story.
you trial balloon it. See
I'll
if it makes it through. Yeah, makes it.
I'll be the canary in the coal mine. If I come back dead, then we'll know we can't use it anymore.
Okay. It's a great police song, by the way.
Yeah, it is. Great call.
Yeah,
Good call, Sip.
Good. Hey, Baz, I almost sent you a screenshot of God, why did I not do this last night? I was driving and I saw the Cat Stevens song, Year of the Cat.
Oh, God.
Parker, were you there for that?
I wasn't, but I heard that Baz is a big Cat Stevens fan.
That was in Wisconsin. I remember this. And we met Parker because Parker, of course, from the Madison area. Right. Parker was up visiting family and got a ride into town from his father.
That was when my dad picked you guys up, right?
Yeah, we rode in his dad's car to the stadium, like right up to the back door. And it was you, Sip, it was me, and was it Kayla?
Justin?
No, it wasn't Justin.
Oh,
I don't think it was Justin. It was
Fran.
Emily.
Emily. It was Emily. That's who it was. It was Emily, our photographer. And yeah, that came on the radio, and I absolutely
and I said, "Hey, this is a great song," and Baz just lost his mind.
Absolutely lost my mind.
You don't like Cat Stevens' Year of the Cat at all.
Flew off the handle.
You flew off.
I was angry.
Yeah, I
was like driving in a residential area in Madison, like trying to figure out where to park, like trying to find this parking garage. Like there's a little bit of confusion. I'm a little tense. And Sipple's just sitting there. He's got Cat Stevens turned up going, man, I like this. I'm just oblivious to what's happening in the world around him.
You weren't oblivious to my statement. I mean, you attacked me.
I did attack you. And you know what? It's time for an apology, and I apologize.
No, it's not time. No.
It's time. It's past time.
It's not time. And we don't apologize.
This goes back to my idea that we need to put a GoPro on the dash of every rental car that we have for these road trips, so people could see.
The attack was ferocious, though. It was a
ferocious attack. You could call it that. Yeah. People would be taken aback by the language.
What was worse?
They would be.
What was it? Was it worse than the Big Ten Media Days trip?
Oh no, I don't think so. No, this was very intense, but the Big Ten Media Days was just as intense, but way longer lasting, I think.
When I asked you what type of flowers there were in the ditch,
what do I look like? An effing horticulturalist.
But you
And
said
that was just on the way back. That was just on the way back. I doesn't even count the way up when you got like chocolate chip cookie all over the seat. And like we had to stop at an Oasis outside of Chicago and you didn't have your shoes on. Like,
I just don't think that's heinous. I mean, I don't regard that as heinous. I had my shoes off and I had to put them on.
I got to do this now or else I'm going to scream at my kid when he does stuff like that in like 12 years.
Just getting it out.
Just get it out.
Building.
You got
You're
a baseball.
Speaking of road trips. Speaking of road trips, this is a
I had
transition.
nothing productive to say, but I was just staying on that line of thinking.
Well,
so let's
that's
actually talk
90%
about
of this podcast. Speaking of road trips, Nebraska currently in East Lansing, Michigan, for a 3-game set. Baseball against the Spartans. Nebraska, of course, still in first place in the Big Ten, half-game lead over Michigan. Knocking on the door of most of the 17 national baseball polls there are out there. RPI kind of hovering in the low to mid 40s right now. Some questions starting to be asked. What does that mean for Nebraska's chances to host a regional?
Yeah, what does it mean?
I don't think we know yet. That's the issue because Nebraska's 18-6. After this weekend, they will have played the bottom 5 teams in the Big Ten standings. They've played the bottom 4 right now. Illinois, Purdue, Penn State, and Minnesota, and they're 12-2 in those 4 series. Now you're playing Michigan State, which is the 5th team at the bottom, and their RPI is in the 240s, which is not good. Considering there's about 270 teams playing baseball.
Seems bad.
Yeah, and it's a deal where losing a game to Michigan State. It doesn't necessarily kill you in the Big Ten race, but it could really hurt you for NCAA tournament stuff when it comes to hosting, when it comes to where you're seated, where you end up going, those sorts of things. It's a series where Nebraska can't afford to lose a game. And fair or not, that's the position that all these Big Ten teams are in this year with no non-conference and no midweeks and all those sorts of things. Teams like Nebraska, Michigan, Indiana, they can't afford to lose games like this because if it gets down to the end and it's close between Nebraska and say an ACC school, middle of the pack ACC school to host, they're going to look at that loss to Michigan State and say, "Yeah, I don't know about that. You know, it hurts their RPI. Shouldn't have lost to that bad team." So Nebraska's better than Michigan State certainly, but there's some pressure there for Nebraska to win these 3 games and kind of keep this thing moving going into next week.
Does the schedule get appreciably tougher after this weekend?
Not appreciably. They get Rutgers at home next weekend, and Rutgers has had a nice year. They're at 500. This is the best year Rutgers has had since they've been in the Big Ten. They're around 500 right now. I think they're 12-12. And so they're a little better. Then it picks up, couple with Indiana and Ohio State. It goes after they play Rutgers next week. Then they go to Piscataway the week after that for a pod, play Indiana twice, play Rutgers twice. And then they have, I think they come home and play Northwestern 3 times. And then it's another pod with Indiana, Ohio State. And it's really those last 2 weekends where it gets serious for Nebraska because you'll play Indiana twice, you'll play Ohio State twice, then you'll end the season with a home series against Michigan, which ostensibly is going to be for the Big Ten title, the way things are trending right now. And potentially to see which Big Ten team will host a regional because there surely probably won't be more than one Big Ten team that hosts a regional. And if you're not hosting a regional, then you're probably a 3 seed and maybe going to Fayetteville and play in Arkansas, which they're only 30-5 in the SEC this year, ranked number 1 in the country. So it would not be an easy task. So yeah, it doesn't get appreciably harder for a couple more weeks, but the pressure's there to keep winning, I guess.
Okay.
You know, you can't afford, you might go, 5-1 sounds good and whatnot, but 5-1 might not be good enough when it gets down to the end of the day over these next couple of weeks.
Good job, Baz. That's interesting.
So we'll see. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because they're not playing great teams, but they can't afford to slip up either. And it's baseball, right? Like you slip up, like the pitching staff has an off day. Offense kind of scuffles a little bit. We saw that against Penn State last week. Nebraska kind of scuffled along until the 7th or 8th inning last week in that Friday game against Penn State. And you do that enough, and eventually you get bit. So it's a deal where Nebraska can't really afford to have a bad day right now. A loss isn't going to just knock them out of the NCAA tournament altogether. I'm not saying that, but as far as hosting, as far as being in contention to host, all those sorts of things, they got to keep winning these games.
Good. All right. Good job, Baz.
Is that it?
I think so.
Oh yeah,
I think so.
volleyball's season came to an end, right? Was that late midweek in Omaha?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Texas.
Tough year all around. Yeah, Texas is the Big Ten destroyer so far. Penn State just rolled through Penn State, Nebraska, and Wisconsin, play Kentucky in the championship. But that's another, like, every sport as we go through this, like every sport that finishes this year then faces like a very interesting offseason. Saw that with football, with guys coming back, some not, hoops, with Thor's news today. Volleyball is going to be super interesting because you've got some seniors on that team that could come back, might not. And it's just going to be, you got some young players who have been, like, ostensibly, like, the freshmen were in the program all spring, but weren't eligible to play. So you've got some really talented players who have, like, seen what it looks like up close and personal. And you've got a group that didn't get accomplished what they wanted to right down the road in Omaha. Obviously weird circumstances with the tournament, but just another sport at Nebraska where it just shapes up to be a fascinating offseason because of the weirdness of the last season.
Yeah. And you mentioned seniors, and it's not just seniors, like,
yeah,
it's all American seniors.
Yeah, right.
It's your two best
super seniors. Seniors.
Literally super seniors.
Yeah.
Lauren Stivrins and Lexi Sun, of course.
Supreme super seniors.
Yeah. Careful with all your S's there.
Super seniors.
The Supremes. Maybe we could call them the Supremes. We could call the volleyball
Supremes.
seniors the Supremes.
All right,
Bring back a little Motown.
this feels like an end point.
You're sort of like a super senior.
Yeah. Little bit.
HR. There it
HR.
is.
We gotta call. Sipple's got to call HR.
There
All right.
it is.
He forgot the number to HR, but he's going to call it. All right. On that note, we'll wrap this thing up. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in. Next week,
Look at Parker laughing at his own joke.
No, I was laughing at Baz's joke.
Yeah, he's laughing at my joke.
You forgot the number to HR, but you're going to look it up.
Anyway.
Might send an electronic mail message.
Yeah. With like one of those glittery gift things on the end of it. Anyway, we'll talk to you guys next week when we preview the spring game. Until then, stay safe. We'll talk to you soon.